I found out about my sister's wedding through a stranger's Instagram story. There she was, smiling in a white gown, surrounded by flowers and people I knew. Everyone, except me. No call, no message, not even a lie to cover the silence. I stared at the photo until my throat burned, wondering what I had done that was so unforgivable. But then I saw him. The groom, and my blood turned to ice because I knew that face, not from my sister's stories, but from the night that destroyed my trust in everything. I told myself it couldn't be true. Maybe it was just someone who looked like him. But deep down, I already knew that man was the reason I stopped believing in love. That's when I decided to go. Not as a guest. I wasn't invited. But as a truth that couldn't be buried. I'd stand at the back, silent, just to see if his eyes would recognize mine. Just to see if guilt would crack his perfect smile. Would he remember me? Would she finally see who she was marrying? Or was I about to ruin everything? Again, the wedding music floated through the garden like it belonged to someone else's world. Laughter, champagne, the soft shuffle of dresses brushing against white chairs. Everything perfect, everything beautiful. Except for the shadow standing at the back. I felt like a ghost haunting the living, invisible yet heavy with unfinished truth. My sister, radiant, glowing, looked like she'd finally found her forever. But forever has a strange way of cracking when secrets sit underneath it. The groom turned again, pretending not to see me. His hand trembled slightly as he adjusted his cufflink, but his eyes betrayed him. Panic, guilt, something raw he was trying to bury. My stomach twisted. Did my sister really not know? Or had she chosen not to? I should have turned around, walked away, saved her peace. But peace built on lies doesn't last. Not when you've seen what I've seen. I remember that night like it's carved into my bones. The rain, the headlights, the crash, and the man who swore me to silence. He said it was an accident, that no one would believe us if we told. I believed him once, and now he stood there, dressed in silk and vows, pretending that night never happened. My hands shook as the vows began. My sister's voice trembled with love, his with calculation. When he promised to protect her, I almost laughed. Protect? He couldn't face the truth. I took one step closer, then another, each step heavier than the last, my heart pounding in rhythm with the wedding march. If he wouldn't tell her, maybe it was my turn. Someone finally noticed me. My aunt's whisper cut through the soft hum of the crowd. Heads began to turn. The groom's eyes darted between me and my sister like a trapped animal. I could almost hear his thoughts. Don't. Not here. Not now. But I was done being quiet. Every moment of silence had cost me something. Sleep, peace, trust. My sister's gaze followed his. Confusion spreading like a stain across her perfect smile. Her lips parted as she saw me, and in that instant, the whole world seemed to hold its breath. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her, and somehow she knew this wasn't a coincidence. The officiant hesitated, glancing nervously at the couple as the silence thickened. My sister took a step forward, her voice shaking. "What's going on?" I didn't answer. The groom reached for her hand, but she pulled it away, reading the fear behind his forced smile. And just like that, the perfect image of love began to crumble. I hadn't even spoken, yet the truth was already clawing its way to the surface. People started whispering, the kind that feels like thunder in your ears. The moments stretched, unbearable, fragile, and unstoppable. Maybe I didn't need to say a thing. Maybe just being there was enough. Because the truth has a way of speaking for itself. The air turned heavy, like the world itself realized something sacred had been disturbed. My sister's eyes darted between us, searching for answers that neither of us wanted to give. The groom tried to steady himself, straightening his tie as though formality could hide the fear in his face. I could see him rehearsing lies behind his trembling lips. He had done this before, lied beautifully, convincingly, without blinking. But this time, he was trapped between two versions of his own story. One where he was innocent, and one where he had everything to lose. My sister's voice cracked. "Do you know her?" And just like that, the first thread of their perfect world began to unravel. He finally spoke. "She's no one," he said, voice low and uneven. "Just someone I used to know." The words stung more than I expected. Used to know. Like what he did didn't still echo through every sleepless night I had. My sister looked at me, her hands trembling. I wanted to protect her, but not with silence. Not anymore. "Tell her," I said quietly. My voice was steady, but my heart raced so fast I thought I'd faint. The guests were completely still now, all waiting for his next move. And when he didn't answer, I took a step forward and whispered the words I swore I'd never say out loud again. He wasn't the victim that night. He was the reason someone didn't make it home. The gasp that spread through the crowd was like a single wave of disbelief. My sister covered her mouth, eyes welling with tears she didn't understand yet. "What is she talking about?" she demanded, voice trembling between fear and denial. The groom opened his mouth, closed it, then looked at me like a man about to drown. "It was an accident," he whispered, but the words sounded empty. "You made me promise not to tell," I said, "because you didn't want your life to fall apart." My throat burned, but I kept going. "You left someone bleeding on the road that night, and you drove away. You said you'd take the blame if anyone found out, and then you disappeared." My sister stumbled backward, her perfect curls falling loose, her voice trembling. You knew," she whispered to him. He nodded, tears finally breaking through, and for the first time I saw something almost human in his expression. Regret, maybe, or fear. But it was too late. The truth had already poisoned everything it touched. My sister turned toward me, betrayal shining in her eyes. "And you didn't tell me," she cried. That hurt more than anything, because I thought I was protecting her. I thought silence was mercy. But now I saw the cost. A heart broken twice. Once by him and once by me. No one clapped. No one moved. The music had long stopped, and the silence now felt sacred. The kind that comes only after everything breaks. My sister looked between us like she didn't know who to hate more. Maybe she was right to hate us both. I turned to leave, the gravel crunching beneath my heels. But her voice stopped me. "Wait," she said softly. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. "Was it true?" she asked. "Was it really him?" I closed my eyes and nodded. The truth, after all this time, finally had a voice, and it didn't feel like victory. It felt like grief, quiet, heavy, and overdue. That night never really ended for me. It just kept replaying in pieces whenever the world went quiet. I was driving home from work when I saw his car on the side of the road, hazard lights blinking in the rain. I pulled over, thinking someone was hurt, that I could help. But when I stepped closer, I saw the dent in his bumper and the body on the ground. He was shaking, soaked through, whispering, "It was an accident. He came out of nowhere." I wanted to believe him. His hands were covered in blood, but his eyes, they were full of fear, not guilt. And when the sirens echoed in the distance, he begged me not to call. "They'll blame me," he said. "You don't understand." I did, too well, and that's how my silence began. The man on the ground was breathing, shallow, broken, but alive. I remember kneeling beside him, my shaking hands searching for a pulse, while the groom muttered excuses. He ran into the road. It's not my fault. But I saw his phone on the passenger seat, the half-read text, the glow of a message that said, "Come outside. I'm here." He'd been texting while driving. I told him we needed to call for help, but he grabbed my wrist. "Please," he begged, his voice cracking. "If they find out, I'll lose everything." His fear infected me, made me freeze, and in that hesitation, time slipped away until the sirens faded and the man stopped breathing. We buried the truth that night under silence and shame. He drove me home, hands trembling on the steering wheel. Neither of us spoke. The radio hummed softly, pretending everything was fine. Before I got out, he said the words that kept me quiet for years. "If you tell anyone, you'll destroy both our lives." Maybe he was right. I didn't sleep for days. The newspaper said hit and run. No witnesses. I watched my sister fall in love with him months later, never realizing who he was. I tried to tell her once, but she smiled and said, "You'd like him if you gave him a chance." And maybe that was the cruelest part. She was right. I did like him once, before I knew what he'd done. Years later, when she introduced him as her boyfriend, I thought my heart would stop. He smiled like nothing had ever happened, like the blood on his hands had simply washed away with the rain. I tried to convince myself I was wrong, that maybe I remembered the face wrong, the name wrong, everything wrong. But when he said my name at dinner, softly, cautiously, the same way he had that night, I knew. And he knew that I knew. From that moment, every family gathering was a performance. His arm around her waist, my smile pretending not to tremble. The secret sat between us like a ticking clock, waiting for this day to come. So when I saw the wedding photos online, it wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the final proof that he'd won. He had buried the truth beneath white flowers and vows. But lies, no matter how beautiful, always rot beneath the surface. That's why I went, not to ruin her wedding, but to give her the truth she deserved, even if it destroyed everything. Because I've learned something about secrets. They never stay buried forever. They grow roots in silence, cracks in the heart, and when they finally surface, they take everything down with them. By the next morning, everyone knew. My phone buzzed nonstop. Relatives, old friends, even coworkers, all wanting the same thing. My side of the story. But what could I say? That my silence had protected a man who didn't deserve it. That my truth had destroyed my sister's wedding. I turned the phone off. Outside, the world went on as if nothing had happened. But inside, everything had changed. My mother called, her voice trembling, asking why I would do such a thing on her special day. She didn't ask if it was true, just why I said it. And that hurt more than the accusations, because deep down, she already knew the answer. I did it because love without truth isn't love at all. It's just pretending. The news spread fast. The wedding photographer posted a statement online about the ceremony being interrupted, and from there, gossip did the rest. My sister didn't call me, but I saw her post a photo of the sunset with a caption, "Sometimes love isn't what it seems." I read it over and over, wondering if it was meant for me or for him. The comments poured in, people pretending to know the truth. But none of them did. Only 3 people knew what really happened that night, and 2 of them couldn't look at each other anymore. I deleted my accounts after that. Some truths don't belong online. 2 days later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find him, the groom, standing there, no tie, no smile, just hollow eyes. He looked smaller somehow, like the truth had finally taken something from him too. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said quietly. "I know," I whispered. "But you let it." For a long moment, We stood there in silence, the rain outside tapping gently against the glass. Then he said something I didn't expect. "I'm turning myself in." His voice broke on the last word, and for the first time I saw the man he used to be. Not evil, just cowardly, finally ready to face the wreckage he created. He kept his word. The police came that night, and for the first time in years I told them everything. My sister didn't show up at the station, but I didn't blame her. Some wounds are too fresh to face head-on. When I walked out, the world felt lighter. Not healed, but honest. I watched as they led him away, his head bowed, rain dripping from his collar. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Because redemption doesn't erase what's been done. It only gives it a place to rest. And maybe, in a strange way, that's what we both needed. An ending that finally told the truth. When I got home, my sister was waiting on the steps. She looked smaller than I remembered, sitting there in an oversized hoodie, her eyes swollen from crying. Neither of us spoke at first. Then she said softly, "I should have believed you." I sat beside her, the silence between us warmer this time. "I should have told you," I whispered back. And for the first time in years, we didn't need to hide behind words. The truth had broken us, yes, but maybe it also gave us a chance to start again. The stars began to fade into the morning sky, and I realized something. Endings aren't always loud. Sometimes they're just two people sitting together, finally quiet, finally honest. The house was quiet when we returned, but the silence felt heavier than the rain outside. My parents were waiting, their faces masks of calm that didn't hide the storm beneath. My mother's lips trembled as she asked, "Why didn't you tell us?" My father's hands, folded tightly in front of him, shook just a little. I could see the guilt in their eyes, the realization that years of looking away had allowed this to fester. "I tried," I said. "I tried to protect her. I thought silence would help, but it only made things worse." My sister leaned against the doorframe, quiet, absorbing it all. And in that moment, I realized the truth. Reckoning isn't about blame. It's about facing what we've ignored for too long. My parents' silence lasted longer than I expected. Then my father spoke, voice low and heavy. "We should have seen it. We should have listened." My mother's hand covered her mouth, and I saw the heartbreak that years of ignorance had carved into them. My sister's eyes shifted between us, her small hands gripping her knees. The house that once felt safe now seemed fragile, like glass ready to shatter. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand apologies, but the quiet seemed more fitting. Sometimes, reckoning isn't loud. It's a slow, suffocating awareness that nothing will ever be the same. My sister finally broke the silence. "Why didn't you trust me?" Her voice shook, a mixture of anger and pain. I swallowed hard. "I thought I was protecting you. I didn't know how else to keep you safe." She shook her head slowly. "Safe? Safe would have been telling me the truth before I almost married him. Safe would have been letting me decide." Her words struck me like lightning. I realized then that protection without trust isn't protection at all. It's control. And sometimes the people you love most are the ones you hurt without meaning to. The conversation spiraled, long and painful, like peeling layers from a wound that had never healed. My mother admitted she had noticed subtle changes in his behavior years ago, but chose to ignore them. My father confessed he had brushed off my fears, thinking I was overreacting. My sister listened quietly, absorbing every word like a storm breaking in slow motion. And through it all, I realized something essential. Reckoning isn't just about exposing the truth. It's about facing the consequences, the hurt, the guilt, and the love that survives despite it all. By evening, the house felt different. Heavier, yes, but also lighter in a strange way. The unspoken had been spoken, and while nothing would erase the pain, honesty had carved a path forward. My sister and I sat together quietly, our shoulders touching without words, understanding flowing between us. My parents lingered nearby, watching, perhaps realizing that family isn't perfect, but it can endure. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't in years. The possibility of forgiveness, not as a word, but as a quiet, steady presence. Maybe the reckoning was not the end. Maybe it was the beginning. The first weeks after the reckoning were quiet, almost painfully so. We avoided the topics that could ignite anger, but even in silence, the tension lingered like a shadow. I watched my sister move through her days with a careful grace, learning to breathe without pretending everything was perfect. Sometimes she would glance at me, and our eyes would meet, a silent acknowledgement that we had survived the worst together. My parents tried to be present without suffocating, realizing that trust can't be demanded, only earned. Slowly, the walls between us began to crumble, brick by brick, each apology and conversation a small step towards something resembling peace. One afternoon, my sister and I walked through the park where we had spent summers as children. We didn't talk about him, not yet. Instead, we talked about books, memories, and the little things we'd missed while the world had been falling apart around us. I realized that trust isn't repaired in grand gestures. It grows in the quiet moments, in laughter shared and hands held when no one is watching. Step by step, we were reclaiming the parts of ourselves that had been lost to fear and secrecy. We invited my parents to join us for a small dinner that evening, not as a performance, but as a shared moment of healing. Conversation flowed awkwardly at first, punctuated by long pauses and hesitant smiles. Then laughter broke through, small, hesitant at first, but real. I realized that trust wasn't just being rebuilt between my sister and me, but across the entire family. Each story we shared, each truth we admitted, was a brick in the bridge we were slowly building back together. Weeks turned into months and the wounds began to fade, though the scars remained. The bride started seeing a counselor to process the betrayal, and I found solace in journaling, capturing every thought and emotion. My parents, too, sought guidance, realizing that forgiveness is a process, not a moment. Slowly, family dinners became routine again. Conversations flowed more freely, and laughter returned without the edge of guilt. I understood then that rebuilding trust doesn't erase the past. It simply teaches us to navigate the present with care, awareness, and love. One evening, my sister and I sat on the porch with mugs of tea, wrapped in blankets as the stars blinked into view. We didn't need to speak. The silence carried our understanding. After everything, the love between us had changed, deepened, shaped by truth and resilience. I realized that the hardest part of rebuilding trust wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about accepting it, forgiving where possible, and moving forward together. We laughed quietly at some shared memory, the sound lighter than it had been in years. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the fragile, beautiful certainty that our family could survive anything, as long as honesty remained at its center. It was a crisp autumn morning when we finally felt like a family again. Not perfect, not untouched by the past, but alive in a way we hadn't been for years. The leaves painted the streets in shades of amber and gold, and the air smelled of change. We walked together through our old neighborhood, joking quietly, memories slipping between us like warm light. My sister smiled at me in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. Open, trusting, full of life. I realized then that the past hadn't been erased, but it no longer controlled us. We had rebuilt, not by pretending the hurt didn't exist, but by facing it together, side by side. We decided to host a small family dinner to mark the moment, not a celebration of the past, but a recognition of how far we'd come. The table was modest, candles flickered softly, and the laughter came easily. Stories were shared, some funny, some bittersweet, and for the first time in years, it felt safe to be fully ourselves without masks or pretenses. Healing, I realized, wasn't a single moment. It was the accumulation of small, honest choices, apologies, conversations, and the courage to show up for one another again. Weeks later, my sister and I returned to the park where we had rebuilt our trust. The benches were empty, the leaves crunching beneath our feet, and the world felt quiet enough to hear our own breathing. We talked about the future, not in grand terms, but small, achievable steps, vacations together, late-night talks, and shared laughter without tension. And in those moments, I realized something profound. Love between family doesn't always mean perfection. It means persistence, patience, choosing one another again and again, even when the past has left scars. One evening, we gathered as a family on the porch, sipping tea and watching the stars appear. My parents, once distant and cautious, laughed freely again. My sister rested her head on my shoulder, a quiet trust in her eyes. I realized that the bond we had lost was not gone forever. It had only been hidden beneath fear, lies, and silence. Now, honesty and courage had unearthed it. The world beyond the porch could still be uncertain, still hold shadows of the past, but here, in this space, we were safe. And we were whole. And so we moved forward, not forgetting the pain, but learning from it, not erasing the past, but shaping the future with honesty and love. The scars remained, yes, but they were part of the story. Proof that we survived, that we fought, and that we chose one another, even after betrayal. I watched my sister laugh freely, my parents smile without hesitation, and I realized something I hadn't known for years. Family is not about perfection. It's about presence, resilience, and the courage to begin again, no matter how many times life forces you to. And in that, we found a new beginning.